that's where it is for most of us, isn't it? For the
And
most part.
the first time I got high, I loved it, man. I fell in love with it. It was so euphoric.
Yeah.
I just never could get it. Like it was expensive when you don't have any money, and
Yeah.
I didn't know the people. I didn't run around that crowd. Nobody does really when you're in the ninth grade. We just kind of found it through somebody that found it. You know what I mean? But when I was in high school, I tried to drink the beer and the wine cooler, and it just didn't stick. But whenever weed was around, that was just the best day ever. And then it was just and then I was never around it. Thankfully, I was
Yeah.
never with that all the time. And then weed may somehow surface. Several weeks later, I remember having a girlfriend that was older that went to Bradley when I was at Charleston. Now that I think about it, and I remember weed being around that house often. Sometimes, not all the time, but I remember the weekends that it showed up. I'd be like, "Can I please stay here longer, please?
I'm gonna hang out here tonight, please.
Please, we're going to try to go to church tomorrow, please, please." I didn't want to leave,
Yes, sir.
But it didn't stick. Thankfully, it just didn't stick through then. But when I drunk my first screwdriver is when
That vodka and orange juice will get you, man.
that's when it latched on. I could take you to the exact bar in Columbus, Ohio, where that happened.
The crazy thing is you never know. You don't have any idea going into that night and into that drink what's going to happen. No clue.
Yeah.
So for me, like it was basically high school, and most parents work in the summer. So I'm just home. Grew up in a neighborhood in Cleveland or off Urbane Road, and tons of friends. And so in the summer, parents are at work for the most part, and you've got one of your buddies has an older brother who keeps beer in his toolbox in his truck. So, you might get a couple of those. You've got another buddy that keeps whiskey in a sock drawer. So you might get some of that. Another buddy knows where his dad's weed stash is. It's just always around. So I feel like it felt like it was always around, but it was kind of like your situation. I would say it wasn't like every single day. It was just when it came around, it was like, yeah, heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so always loved it. I drink whatever drug, didn't care. I loved everything about it. But, ended up, going to work and having kids. And I don't know. The first, I guess I thought of myself as a beer drinker, like when my kids were young. But what came with it is a smell of alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
and so I didn't really want my kids to grow up with that smell.
Yeah.
And to be able to attribute behaviors with that. I wanted to, just didn't want to grow up with an alcoholic dad. So I had a buddy one time bring me some pills, right? And this is I'm an adult. I'm in a full-time job. I've got kids in school, yeah. And just out of the blue, and I was like, now this is something I could take. I could get that edge, and my kids will never know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you take that process and you compress it into a daily pursuit of that high. It doesn't start out like that, but it progresses. You have no idea when you first pop those two, whatever it may be, and how you feel. Man, that's all right. I can get a lot of work done like this. You have no clue where it's going to go or how bad it is. So pills for years. I would say a decade. And back then, you didn't. It wasn't hard to get them. You get them on the internet. You could
Really?
Yes, you could get the pills on the internet. The internet doctor would write you a prescription, and it was what I suspect it's the same type of people. But what I found was different websites that you could order on. So you couldn't go to website xyz.com and order pills every 2 weeks because it would be like a regular prescription. It would be a 30-day prescription, so you'd have to wait. But you could go to xyz1.com,
mm-hmm.
which is an exact mirror site, and you could order that in 2 weeks. So then you have every 2 weeks FedEx man bringing you pills.
Wow.
So, and there's a huge psychological effect to drugs. Of course, there's a physical effect, but when you don't have them, you feel bad. You're in the bed. But I can remember distinctly hearing the FedEx dude pull up, and all of a sudden, man, I'm good. Like, woohoo, my guy's here. So
wow.
That's my very first drug dealer, most consistent one was the FedEx man.
Did you have to get like was it like a phone call doctor? Like you were with a legit doctor doing a kind of an appointment?
So what I did was fill out a questionnaire that rated my pain. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about, this would have been 2007 through maybe 2012, a 5-year stretch right there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so of course I find a lot of stuff, you find out stuff after the fact, but in the 90s, doctors were given basically a mandate to treat pain with narcotics, and they're told that they're non-addictive. Like it's just this magic pain. Yeah, absolutely. And so they were told they're not addictive, and patients were given the 0 to 10 scale. And they would rate their pain, and if a doctor did not treat that pain, then they could be financial. I mean, they could be liable for it. So they were just prescribing these freaking opiates out the wazoo in the '90s and the early 2000s, and yeah, here comes the opiate epidemic. But
Wow.
Lou Ortenzia is the one who tells that story. He was a practicing physician in West Virginia, and so
Hmm.
that's he was the tip of the spear of the opiate epidemic and had no idea.
Wow, that's crazy. That reminds me of a story. I got one of my friends to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting with me several years ago, and he said, "Yeah, man, I'll go." And I knew the guy. He's several years younger than me, and I knew he had the propensity, for pills or weed or drinking. But he was open to coming to a meeting with me. He knew that I'd gotten sober, and I was like, "Heck yeah, man! Yeah, I'll come pick you up." He's like, "Yeah, just come get me." And we talked, that day. Yeah, just come around. Okay, the meeting starts at 7. I'll come pick you up. 10 till or something like that. And then I came to get him, and he came to the car, and he was just sleepy. I was like, "Oh no, this guy's high.
As a guy,
He's high." And I'm taking him to the AA meeting, and I'm like, "Dude, you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, I just woke up." I'm like,
doesn't look
okay,
like it.
well, maybe you did just wake up. That's exactly what you look like when maybe he's fresh from waking up. How these people, they can just kind of crash with their clothes on, and I don't know. He's like 25. I'm like
Maybe
older,
this is that guy.
and so we get to the meeting, and he's just not waking up at all. And I'm having an elbow. It's getting embarrassing
So
now.
you're talking to this dude's like slow.
Yeah. And in theory, at best practice, you're not supposed to go to a recovery meeting stoned or high or drunk. Or you could. Maybe that's the meeting. Maybe that's the one you need to be at. You really need the help then.
Maybe there's one instance of that. Yeah.
Yeah. This dude can't keep his head up. I mean, it is just like this. And my AA friends are looking at me like, now there's no judgment in Alcoholics Anonymous or there's no judgment at all. But this was pushing it. This dude was, I mean, like, we're going to prop your head up with a broom, man. Like, dude, this is embarrassing.
It is bad.
Like, just don't come if you're going to fight off this, the Sandman the whole time. And he finally pulled it together and was like, okay, okay. And then he's like, I got something to say. And I'm like, no, you
don't.
can't. You can't say anything. You've been asleep for 51 minutes.
Bro, you don't even know where you're at. What are you talking about?
He says, I just want to just give a shout out to my man, Michael. This dude come and pick me up. He's always encouraging me, always looking out for me. He's the best friend anybody can ever have. I'm like, okay, spoken like a true drug addict. Right?
Drug addict, absolutely.
Thanks. We were almost home free, and you had to give that testimony. Now we're going to get talked to outside for sure.
Dude, the recovery community is something else.
They take it serious because it's a serious thing. And then they're like, does anybody want a white chip to start or restart the program of sobriety? And he's like, I'll take one. And I was like, yeah, you did.
You need one.
You need one.
You
Brother.
need one.
You need one, man. I love you, man. Come on. And then a couple of my friends were like, hey, dude, are you okay tonight? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, man, just really tired. Okay. And come like a year later or whatever, he told me, he says, he's like, bro, I almost died of a heroin overdose. And I thought about that because when you're leading up to pain pills and like it gets to that because heroin is a pain reliever. And so that's kind of how people get on that train. And he's like, man, I almost died from a heroin overdose. And I'm like, wow, like, I don't even know what it looks like, but I know it is everywhere. And I'm just so glad I never got a taste of it. But he's like, yeah, man. He's like, hey, do you remember that night we went to that AA meeting?
He's going to go ahead and come out and confess he was
well, he did. And he said he was sorry. He's like, that was just days before I died from heroin, man. He says, when you're high on heroin, your body just wants to turn off all of it.
So I only got heroin one time, luckily. But when you develop into a pill addiction, you have a doctor that's going to give you certain ones, and then you have the street that's going to give you the other ones because your usage is way higher than what your prescription is, every time. And so yeah, a lot of it comes from the street. And so I was on these pills, and I mean everybody knew but me. I knew I was high, but I was good, always functioning, and I ended up losing my job, a pretty decent job, and kind of threw it away. But I do know that God is faithful, and He lets us walk through some stupid moments and hangs in there with us. But lost my job, ended up at in Boone, North Carolina, at a biblical. They don't call it a rehab. It's an addiction treatment center. Not even
Okay.
a treatment center. It's an addiction ministry, really, where they look at addiction as purely a sin issue, which is exactly the way I believe. I don't believe that it's a disease at all. I believe it's 100% sin. But we're out before I ended up there. I'm out with one of my buddies. I promise you, this is a true story. Some of my old drug buddies are better than people I work with now. I'm telling you, like it's unreal. But anyways, we're out and we cannot find pills. You know, you've got all kinds of different. As fun as getting high is a lot of times is the pursuit of these drugs. You know, so you've got different lines going, and it ends up we don't get anything except for the potential for heroin. And so as an addict, if you're thinking in your mind, man, I'm going to get X today, and then it doesn't come through, you may have told yourself you would never do drug Z, but if drug Z is there,
Well,
you're going to go do drug Z.
you will tell yourself that you'll take a very reduced dose
You will
because you don't want
justify
to die.
however.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. One thing, I was never an IV drug user,
Right now.
which IV drugs, that's a different story, man.
Wow.
So I just snorted that heroin, and it was great, but it was almost like God spoke into my spirit, like, this is it. If this is how, this is kind of a turning point for you. If you keep going this, it's over. What that means, I had no idea. But I ended up in rehab, or at the biblical ministry center, and that's where I got born again. Like, I grew up in church, but never really honestly got born again. And so I'm listening to this absolute dynamic evangelist sitting there. It's May 27th, I think, or 28th, 2017. And he's just talking about, parables of Jesus. And there's, it's in Luke, go find it. But there are 10 lepers that Jesus heals. And only one of them returned back to say thanks. So that night, since I got this, Hebron Colony Ministries is the name of this place. And, when I first got there, I lost my job. I'd left my wife and my kids. I was, it's pretty humiliating. So I'm crying because I feel sorry for myself out of self-pity, because I don't know of a better narcissist than me. But it's, I'd been there for, not that long, and maybe a month. And this dude came, and I guess it was like God was saying, you haven't even said thanks for this opportunity. And so, what is that opportunity? Well, it's the opportunity to shed the cares of your life. And you are in a 24/7 structured facility where you can really study your scriptures. You can pray. You can really move toward God. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. Man, I came off the mountain in August of 2017, July of 2017, man, and I was free. But it doesn't last if you don't pay attention to it. You know what I mean? You've got to. It's a battle you have to fight every day. And so I was good for a while, maybe 4 years, 3 years. Mm-hmm. But then, so I'm working at Amazon. And so the advantage to Amazon, or what's great about Amazon, is that it's a super freaking easy job. You don't have to think. So you have this gun, and what it says, you go to where it says, you scan it, and whatever it is they say, you scan it, and you put it in your bug, and you keep going. You do that for 10 hours a day. So it was great to begin with, but then you kind of started getting bored, and I'm like, man, I need something better. I need something more challenging. Need some more money, and I got a message from one of my old bosses asking me if I wanted to come back to the candy factory. I was like, heck yeah, I want to come back to the candy factory. And maybe it was good, but what I didn't know is that COVID was coming. And so COVID was the absolute most difficult stretch of my professional career. And so you have a certain number of people to make your operations go, and then all of a sudden we're going to take a third of those people away. Mm-hmm. You still have to hit the same marks. You still have to produce the same number of cakes, but you don't have people. You can't run. So, it just creates a ton of pressure from the top down through. And yeah, I guess when you're running a shift and you're not able to produce what you're able to produce, you kind of internalize a little bit. And so what I thought is I needed some help. Like, I need help. And, our help comes from the hills. It's from the Lord. That's what, for a man that's born again, you look to God. But as I looked for a decade to drugs, I had somebody pop in at a moment of weakness and help me out with some drugs. And that started the very first relapse of my life. I guess October of 2020, my boss goes on quarantine, and I never saw the dude again. He ended up dying in the hospital. And yeah, he's a good dude, man. He's a good dude. It's a COVID death. And, I don't make my position on COVID hidden at all. But, I got pissed off at God. I'm not even going to lie to you. It never pays to be mad at God. But what I've learned is that, He's right where you leave him. Um, but why? I always wonder why. A lot of these things, but you just don't ever get the why. But you've got to remember. I've got to remember that God is faithful, and God is sovereign.
Mhm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to understand everything or know why and everything. It just is. And the sun rises again tomorrow.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but he gets you through it
You just
if
keep
you let him.
trucking. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the it's I learned you don't really tout your successes quite as much. I was relapse never even entered my mind ever because it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
Never. And so yeah, it happened bigger than junk. Ended up at a second treatment facility earlier this year, actually for 2 weeks, and so we're trying again.
Right.
It's a battle every day, every single day, every day.
Yeah, for sure. Did did you with alcohol? We have Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Do you guys have something similar to that? That
So Celebrate Recovery is what I was involved in.
and that's the church based.
So it is the biblical based recovery program,
Okay.
and which I think it's a great program. But man, what's tough is the recovery community. Like addicts suck. Addicts suck to work with. They suck to deal with. And you would be. I can. You talked about taking your buddy to the meeting. I can remember one time we were having one thing about recovery groups is you have what are called, I guess, open share meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where everybody, it's separated based on gender. So you've got a bunch of men sitting around there, and if you're gonna bare your heart, that's where it is. So one of the guys in our group said, "Hey man, Bob he's been drinking, but he needs somewhere to go. I told him just to come here." And so we're like, "Yeah, that's fine. This is where he needs to be." But Bob was drunk, and so Bob was sitting there, and he would say, I got something to share, guys. Listen, I know, and it would like, dude, listen, you just got to shut up, man. Like, you got to just
Please,
shut up. Like, you're not saying
please shut up.
anything, and it's, I don't know, I'm confused a lot on the recovery community because I know you need community, but I don't need a bunch of people talking about how bad they do drugs. I need people that have some victory in their life, saying this is how I got through victory, and you don't always find that in the recovery community. It's, yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
We got a good group. The ones that the one that's here local. They
You go one day at a time on Broad Street.
Yep, that one. Yep. So same building.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just have different little classrooms. But what I liked about going to a group like Alcoholics Anonymous or NA, same thing, just for folks that use drugs. Probably same exact thing. I don't know. I liked hearing people's stories that were just their life's a heck of a lot worse than mine.
Yeah.
And if I'm having a bad day or I think I got problems and I hear what these people are going through or what they went through to get sober or what they went through when they were addicted, I think the meetings for me just centers me up. I mean, within about 9 minutes of being there, I just get immediately centered up. And I quickly am grateful for sobriety. I'm grateful for a place to learn about it. And I never want to experience half of what these people did experience or are experiencing. And it makes me, I mean, you're right. We need to be humble with it, be strong in sobriety, but be humble because anything is usually maybe 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that approach of, man, God, keep me sober, God, keep me from temptation, and keeping a humble head and a clear head and asking for help when you need help, you could easily find yourself back.
Like that, man. It happens. But community is extremely important. Absolutely extremely important. And you're right, man. You listen to some of the stories that these people tell. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, really.
And then I hear some of those stories and they'll be like, this happened, this happened, this happened, but I'm sober.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, if this cat can stay sober through that,
Yeah. Then
okay.
you can do it. And you're like, well, I got to be able to do it. Right?
Yeah. So I think for me, if there was, and I don't think there is a one silver bullet. There's just a lot of silver bullets.
The gratitude, I think, is the.
But if there was one that I try to push people towards, is just go to the meetings.
That, when I came out of the treatment center this year, that's like that. Your first 100 days, you get 100 meetings, and so what they really preach is, you have a choice restored. Where before, when you go into treatment, you don't have a choice on whether or not you're going to drink or use drugs. You're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
And addicts don't have a choice. Like that choice is made for them every time. So it's, once you go through that and you're free, you have that choice restored, then you got to protect it. I mean, that's valuable because as soon as you give it away, it's gone. For most addicts, it goes right back to where it was.
Well, how did you find out about the place that was in Boone, North Carolina? Your first.
Well, so the pastor at Candy's Creek Baptist Church, Stan Gibson, my wife works there for the school, and of course, I just lost my job, and stuck on drugs, like pretty bad. And he is the one that recommended it. He had been a pastor in South Carolina for I don't know how long, but for a little while, and he'd heard about it then. And it's best decision I made.
Mm-hmm.
The tough part though is the people that die, because you go and I'm there for 70 days, and so when you walk into this, I think there was maybe 50 or 60 guys. No, it's got to be more than that. No, 50, 60 guys. Well, probably capacity between 40 and 80 is what I would say, but I think maybe we had 50. And so you come in with a group of guys, and I came in with, there were 5 of us. And so every week a new set of guys come in. So when you come into this place, every person that you see, like they've got 9 weeks left, 8 weeks left, they're at different stages. And so you run across a lot of people, and you sleep with a lot of people. You eat, you play baseball, softball. You live with these guys essentially for a while. And one of the funniest guys that I ever met in my life. Sometimes people, they say that just the way that they are, they'll say something that just sticks with you, and so you start using those words. I'm trying to think of what's something that happened at Charleston. But do you remember the boom? Like they would say, huh,
yeah.
Boom, stuff like that. Just little stuff. Well, this dude would say, let me find out. And so he would say it in response to everything. It was just the funniest crap ever. But you leave there, he leaves there, and everybody's good. You leave there sober, And
Right.
so every quarter they send a newsletter out, and they have the obituaries in it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did this guy, did he get back on it and pass away?
He did. He did. Just had a baby. And you have a graduation ceremony, and this dude's parents come, brother. I mean, they celebrate it, and it's something to celebrate, man. It is, but knowing that sucks.
But then they've got a newsletter, which is encouraging, but the back of it has a list of people.
Oh, they've got obituaries. Yeah, they've got the obituaries.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so the newsletter. Sorry. Yeah, the newsletter. Just like the update, what's going on at Hebron right now, and then supplies. Things if you want to donate money, stuff like that. But then the back page always has obituaries, and not a lot of them. 12, I think.
Wow.
In 5 years.
They say that with Alcoholics Anonymous too, is that if you ever go back out, the chances of getting sober again are slim to none, but the chances of dying from it is excuse me, is like super high. And my thought is if you went back to something that you were addicted to, like if you think you had a problem with it then, now that you have kind of given up your sobriety, and then you have that self-defeating thought of, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all out,
wide open,
because I'm not going to blow 3 years of sobriety or 5 years of sobriety over 3 beers at Applebee's or something, for example. I'm going to find me an alley, and I'm going to try, to eat cats, and drink 24 beers, and I'm going to try to fight the police, and
you're going to be on a bender.
You're going to be on one heck of a bender. Absolutely. And it's going to last as long as that will last. And I think not being just diving into that just so recklessly and abandoning all hope in life, that people die from that. Like, not only do they not get sober from it, they usually die. So
there's really only 3 endings for addiction. So it's death, institutions, or jail. That's what they've always said.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, or you got to, that's talking about if you don't get sober. Like, you're going to die, you're going to end up at treatment, or you're going to end up in jail. Straight up. Every time. And of course, I love politics, but my politics, my beliefs haven't really changed since the first time I voted in 1996, except for the fact that I'm a little bit more moderate, really, I guess, on marijuana. I'm not a fan of marijuana, but um, you're not going to die on it,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the fentanyl is bad. Yeah, the pills are bad. IV drug use is bad because that stuff is, um, it's a heartbeat and you're gone. And if you don't have somebody there to help you, it's over.
I can't imagine it. And I think that's a whole different demon that that influences you to puncture your body
I was just never
repeatedly.
around those people, or I guess I would have done it too. But I've had, so I was with one dude and his vein right here, like it was collapsed. I mean, it was collapsed. I don't know. He'd injected so much. I was with another dude, and his whole arm was going, like all of his vein, it was done. I mean, his arm was wrecked. It looked like he'd been burned and healed. I mean, but it was track marks.
Wow.
Like, what? And I asked this guy, so what do you do for a living? He's like, I sell drugs. Like, and he was absolutely dead serious. That's what he does. He sells drugs. But he was a pill user, IV pill user.
Wow.
And that was this year. This is a 60-year-old man.
Hmm.
It's crazy. Normally, well, if you're struggling with addiction, you need to get help first of all. But the admitting you need help is the hardest part. For me, I was able to, I lost my job, and so nothing says, oh, hey, you might have a problem here, like doing that. So that motivated me to get some help. But I mean, forever, I never thought there was an issue. Just like drugs.
Yeah.
But of course, I always like to drink too, but not around the kids for whatever reason. I don't know why. So that's the reason I never drank a whole lot. Not that I have drank. There's pictures, but stupid stuff.
Yeah. Being in a facility where you've got exposure to addiction experts, what were some of the things that you took away from there that you're using and that you could share with people?
Assertive language. So there's two schools of thought. There's the biblical school of thought where addiction is a result of sin. But then there's also the psychological school of thought where it's a condition of the human body. So psychologists, I think, as they observe and describe human behavior are pretty valuable. But the main thing that I took away from there is assertive language. And so what that just basically means is telling people how you feel. Bottled up feelings leads to addiction. It's essentially what they're saying. And an inability or unwillingness to confront that drives addiction. Of course, and it's also a trauma cycle, and I think a lot of it's learned, is what they say. But it really all boiled down to every activity that we did was about expressing feelings. So use assertive language. YouTube has all kinds of freaking videos on it, but it's like this. Hey, Michael, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. So when we're going forward, as we go forward, let's do this. And it's really that simple. And they didn't teach us that in school.
As funny as that sounds, man, it really works.
It does. It's communication.
It really works. Just getting your feelings off your chest, whether the person changes or doesn't. It helps you.
Well, my wife has helped me a ton, which is my high school sweetheart. We didn't touch on her at all, but she works at this Christian school, or it's a private school, but she helps me a ton, and a part of that is, shoot, I just lost. I was coming off with something you
talking
said.
about the feeling statements.
Yeah,
she helps you.
Yep. Oh, with relational boundaries. Okay. So, boundaries in relationships are a thing. So, the way she explained it to me is like, the way I open myself up to you determines how I have to respond to that relationship. So, the more access I give you to my life, the more I have to respond to this person. So, let's say in a professional setting where you don't really necessarily want to be in a personal area, then you have a boundary where the discussion that we're going to have at work tonight is going to be 100% about work, period. And that's how you stop yourself from becoming too involved in certain situations, and you help stay objective, really. Because I love, I like people a lot. I love people. People make me happy for the most part, and I love to be around people, but people are tough. They're a drain. And if you have any kind of charisma, man, they just latch on, and they just weigh you down. And if you listen at all, they're going to tell you all kinds of stories about their life. Half of that crap I'm not trying to hear, because golly, some people have been through some rough stuff.
Yeah, you've got to manage it.
You do. And so I never thought about this stuff before. So here I am, 45, and learning little things, the tricks of the trade.
Feeling statements, boundaries. Yeah, I could definitely see where that would that would definitely be a trigger. when I think about people that are addicted or was addicted or myself, a lot of I don't know people. I liked the way drinking made me feel. I don't think I had a bunch of pain. I mean, we all have a little bit of pain, a little bit of trauma, a little bit of rejection. Everybody's got their share of that. I like the way it made me feel.
Yeah,
I liked it, but I could see where if you didn't ask for help, if you didn't talk about what you were going through, that if you were already had a tendency to use, that every terrible day would just continue to mount up and it would just continue to just feed that desire to escape it
yep.
through drugs and alcohol.
And
I could see
for
that.
years in your life, that's what you're going to, and it's tangible and it's real and it's accessible.
Mhm.
Um, but it's it's not the way.
Yeah, definitely not.
I've learned in life all the shiny things are shiny because there's no value there. They have to get their attention other ways. It's the most simple things in life that are the most valuable. The most simple.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. What are some daily habits or things that you're doing now? I mean, 'cause if if a person relapsed, there's got to be things like thank God you made it back and you made it out and you made it into a good spot. What are some things that you learned that okay, I've got a second clean slate again? What were some of the things that kind of led up or triggered that relapse that you now recognize and you won't ever do?
So what directly impacted my relapse was my boss dying from COVID, and as if I don't know God is the one who gives breath, the life, the breath of life. As if I don't know that. Heck, his kids seem like they're handling it way better than I do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's crazy, but that's I was like, how what? So I was mad. I was mad at God about that, and then in his absence, so he was a born again Christian, and it was good to work with him because he was he was 60ish, so he had a ton of experience, smart guy, and here I am. I've been clean for 2 years, and God has kind of positioned me under this guy that's
Oh,
a
okay.
seasoned, a seasoned. He's a preacher. He's a seasoned Christian. He's seen some stuff.
So this guy's you've been looking up to him.
Yeah, for a year. Yeah. It was great for me. We didn't always get along, but I mean, we had a like mind, and we were able to talk about things that a lot of other people that aren't believers can't talk
They
about.
can't get it. Yeah.
So yeah, I really relied on that dude. I think probably more than he knew, more than I knew.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we came into an email one day, and he was just going to be quarantined. But yeah, the Joker never came back. Died in the hospital at Death Ridge, or Sky Ridge, whatever it is, Genova. That's where all our kids were buried, or not buried, but born, and they're all good. But that's it, and that one instance didn't lead to the relapse. The unwillingness and stubbornness on my heart to cry out to God first off, and just say, hey, why'd you do this? Because God's going to listen to his children. Like you talk, he's going to listen, but I refuse to talk. So the thing that I turned to for decades became available in great amounts. So that's what I did. That's the route I took. But God is gracious, and you know,
So there were. I'm hearing that there you had a strong person in your life that was a spokesperson in your life, whether he knew it or not, for being close to God and sobriety. That was removed.
I was removed.
Were removed, painfully removed.
Yeah.
That was painfully removed. A person painfully removed from your life, and you didn't know, or you didn't surrender to God or approach it with God. You didn't, or you couldn't work through it well enough.
Yeah. Unwillingness to talk to God in
And
my
then
anger.
something from the past, you get a message from one of the drug people just out of the nowhere. It's a perfect storm, man.
It's wild. It's wild. It's the way life is.
There's several moving things happening at once, and
But we fast forward here, and so I went to the job here on third shift, and so I transitioned to first shift a year ago because we just didn't have the staffing to man third shift. So I'm back on third shift now, and the advantage third shift gives me is I'm able to read my Bible, which I think it's daily reading your Bible is super powerful and important. So I'm able to do that every day and kind of prepare myself spiritually for work,
yeah,
where before I wasn't. And so it's not perfect. It's not like saying, hey, you're going to be a perfect guy from here on out. because man, this battle is not just daily, but it's like every second of every day, every minute of every day.
Yeah.
It's a fight every day.
Yeah. It's a fight worth doing. And there are good days.
Yeah.
There's easy days. But then there are moments where we're tested. Now, I mean, if you just give up on life, then you're never tested.
No, you're
You've already
right.
quit. Yeah, things are. I guess they're easy for you because you're not doing anything with yourself. Of course, that's easy.
If you're still in the fight,
But it's a fight worth fighting.
it is, man. It is.
Absolutely. I remember when I got sober, I had something pretty. I had alcohol poison quite seriously to where I really should have went to the hospital. I really should have. But I was just glad to be alive. And my parents, a grown man, I had no really. I kind of knew where I was, but there was no way I was going to be able to drive. I'd been in a near coma. I've been on a mattress for 2 days, and at a house party. And I finally woke up from that. And I remember laying there, and my eyes just kind of opened up because I would come in and out of it. And I was laying there, and I seen a friend of mine sitting watching TV, and I was like, "They're going to let me die here. They don't know how bad this is on the inside. They just think I'm just, you drink, you pass
Sleeping it
out."
off, man.
Yeah. But I'm like, and I tell myself, I'm going to die here if I don't wake up. And it was so blurry, so blurry. But I remember seeing that person. And I was inside here scared of dying because I
Yeah.
knew I felt like it was hours away.
For the first time in your life, it was like reach out and touch it.
And thankfully, I was able, not that second, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know when, because I blacked out again. But I came back to, and I turned my cell phone on, and I had about 25 missed calls, 25 voicemails. No one knew where I was at.
It's
So
scary.
I had my parents come pick me up. That's like close to 7 years ago. So I'm 30 something years old, bro. And I'm like, here is where I'm at. Please come get me. I can barely get to the bathroom and back. I've not ate in a day or something.
It's a scary spot.
Yeah, super scared.
Which,
And the near death experience, plus some things that happened that night and the next night in my dreams, a supernatural visitation of evil on the most evil levels. And I went to church the next morning, which happened to be Easter morning. So when they did the altar call, when Pastor Sears did the altar call, people are coming this way because they're going to the gondolier and they're going to Ron's Steakhouse
because they're good.
Yeah, they're good. And I am like kind of pushing people. I'm like, you guys can go eat. I'm going to heaven.
Right.
And that was literally because that's exactly what was on the line. And I'm kind of nicely pushing people out of the way to get to the altar for Easter morning. Everybody else is running to wherever they got to get to, man. And I just wept my way to Jesus.
That's how you do it, man. I think a lot of people don't understand what repentance looks like, but it's looks like a sloppy, snotty face.
And then that night, I went to my first AA meeting. And then on my way home from AA, I pull into the gas station where I buy beer all the time, just out of sheer mechanical habit. And I was like,
no,
whoa, whoa, whoa. And I put it in reverse and just started praying. And then the withdrawals from that, I really should have. That's my only regret. I should have went to the hospital.
Yeah,
but
you could die.
I felt that too, because I was having just panic attacks from coming off that alcohol poison. But that second day of being sober, when the withdrawals kind of calmed down and the devil stopped coming to my room, that third day or something, I remember walking to my neighborhood just to get some fresh air. And I was like, this is hands down the most important thing I'll ever do in my life is get and stay sober. I'm going to say that again because we've had trouble with the volume here. I realized after that second day of not drinking, going through the withdrawals, going to the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting with my parents who basically said, you're homeless unless you change. You're homeless unless you go to this meeting. And you've got to stay sober. And that second day, I said to myself, walking in my neighborhood, I never planned to get alcohol poison. I wanted to socially drink for the next 200 years and watch Netflix and work on my car or go, I wanted it. I enjoyed it so much. I wanted to be part of my life. My life was caving in from it. And so here I am, day 2 of being sober. And I'm like, this is the most important thing I'll ever do. I've got to get this right.
Absolutely.
And if I do, I really believe everything is going to just slowly but surely fall into place. And that's exactly what happens to people that get sober and they stick with it. It's not always fun and exciting. It doesn't work perfectly for some people. Things happen.
Yeah,
Exactly. Life happens, and you just have to adjust and stick with it. Reach out for help and stick with the program, and then just see it through. But as they say, your worst day being sober is a better day than your best day being drunk.
It is. I think with alcohol and drug addiction, you start out and you think it's a compliment to your life, or not necessarily a supplement, but a compliment, like to make you that much better in whatever it is that you decide to do. But it ends up bringing it all down every time. But the guy that gave me the very first pain pill I ever took, he's not a pillhead. Like you just the thing is you don't know. You don't know how you're gonna respond until you take it. First drink or the first pill, the first time. You have no idea how.
Yeah.
And some people, it's like us, it just sticks.
Right. Yeah.
But for him, I think back, he's still a good friend today, man. I mean, he didn't.
Yeah, no idea.
No clue. I don't have any. I'm not mad at him about it, but it's just the thing you just don't know about life, what you introduce to people, what it's going to do to them. You just, know. Yeah. So I want to try to make sure we introduce life into people and not drugs.
Right. Right. No doubt, man. Man, that's an amazing testimony.
Yes. God is faithful, man. He is.
Yeah.
He's got to be, because we're not. I'm not.
Right. He is so faithful. Well, what are the things? Just to wrap it up, what are the things you would say to somebody who's kind of had something similar? What would you advise somebody that's kind of on the fence? They don't know whether they're addicted or not, or they kind of don't know. They're probably enjoying some of it.
They are. Yeah, I'd say they're enjoying it for the most part.
But knowing what we know, that's going to come to a terrible end at some point, sooner than later. What would you advise to somebody who's listening?
I think you've got to absolutely reach out to someone that you trust. And the thing is, trust is a tough thing in life today. But if you look, there are resources available. I guarantee you, I've got resources. You can shoot me a message. I know Michael does. But the main thing is just to reach out and say, I need some help.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part. And it's either we reach out and we say we need help, or something's going to happen. I mean, there will be some kind of a catalyst, whether it makes it change for good or bad, you don't know, but something will come. It's better to just get it out, man, because sober life's the only way. It's the way to go.
It's a great place to be. Well, man, Shaun, I have enjoyed the heck out of it.
Yes, it's been a good time.
Absolutely. Come on, anytime.
And we're gonna go make some candy after this. Yeah, go make some candy. I'll bring you party favors next time.
Yeah, please
we'll
do so.
We'll eat them on the Facebook Live.
In between the breaks, we'll do just do those videos where people eat and it drives people crazy, and some people actually like that stuff.
The ASMR videos.
Yeah. So we'll do that. Drive some of y'all crazy. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening again, and we've had a lot of fun here tonight talking about high school, talking about sports, and then we got really really serious and started talking about sobriety and recovery and addiction. But guys, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate everybody's messages offline, and we'll do it again very soon. And like, comment, and subscribe for more stuff. That way you know when we shoot out a new video to you. Thanks.